Hey everybody, I'm here with my good friend Connor Sablan. We've had the opportunity to play together now for a couple of years. This guy has been all over the world playing with acts like Anohea, Fiji, and now Estrella and Ellie Mac and others like that. So been a big fan of yours for a long time, man. I'm glad that we're playing together these last few years and we've had some good times, but you have a pretty incredible story. So for those that don't know, please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, it's been an honor playing with you too, bro. Like, I'm glad that we gelled together so well, especially for
Yep.
the last couple shows.
Yep.
But anyway, my name's Connor, Connor Sablan. I was born and raised in the island of Guam, and I moved out here in 2014 for college, and I just went to community college at San Mateo, and then from there is where I met all my friends who do gigs and gig out and play jazz, play reggae, and that kind of thing. That's actually where I met Chris Cortez too, the drummer of Native Elements.
Awesome.
He's like the one that started giving me a bunch of gigs too.
That's awesome. Yeah, shout out to Guam, man. I was fortunate. We had the Fort Ord here in Monterey area growing up in the 80s and 90s. And so we had, you know, a lot of different folks in the Pacific Islands coming for the military and different things like that. So Monterey Bay actually has quite a few Samoans, Guamanians, Tongans, Fijians. And
Oh
so I
yeah,
was fortunate to grow up with some really cool Guamanian friends. So every time I meet someone from Guam, I'm always like special place in my heart.
nice. Yeah,
And I know
man.
you and your lady are both Guamanian, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we like to meet, it's cool to meet other people from Guam out here too, but especially people who've never heard of it before, because they're just like, where is that? And then you explain, you're like, oh man, it's over here, it's like this. And then it always comes down to the food too. You start talking
Yes.
about the Kelaguen and the Finadeni and the red rice,
Denny, yes.
and everybody just goes crazy. They're like, okay,
Oh, one of
now I want
my
to know more.
yeah, one of my Guamanian aunties, she used to make this Guamanian fried rice, is what she called it. I don't know if it's just her thing or if everyone does it, but it was basically like rice with corned beef hash, kind of like fried up.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man, I still
Fried rice
randomly
for
get
me, huh?
cravings for that. So good.
Oh yeah, man. I can't have too much of that right now. I'm getting a little,
Yeah, totally.
but
Now that we're
I
getting older,
mean,
we got to be careful.
I know, but every once in a while, it's not bad. It's not
So
bad.
how was that, man? Growing up on an island like that, like explain for those that don't know, kind of the history of Guam and like it's kind of a territory, has
Yeah.
some connection to the U.S. It's also kind of independent and different. Like what are how would you explain it to someone who doesn't know?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, the way I remember it and still think about it when I visit is that it's like it's paradise, right? It's a
Yes,
tropical paradise. The
gorgeous.
water is blue and clean, and the people are nice, and it's tropical year round. Um, yeah, it's a territory of the United States. So it's not a state, but if you're born there, you're born with U.S. Citizenship,
Okay.
I think. And yeah, there's a lot of walks of life, different walks of life in Guam. There's the Chamorro people who are the
Yep.
natives. There's also surrounding islanders from the Marianas and from Micronesia and all of those areas that come to Guam too. There's people from Asia, there's Americans. So the thing is that Guam is the reason why the US, in my mind, values Guam the way it does is because there's two major bases there. There's an Air Force base and there's a Navy base and soon to be a Marines base there too, which is kind of like, conflicting with some of the interests of the local people, right? Because
Yeah.
they don't want Guam to be kind of a big militarized hub, you know,
Right.
especially in a flashpoint like the South Pacific.
Exactly. Well,
That
like you said, it's you don't want it to be too militarized, and a lot of the islands are because they're strategically pointed at Asia, our
exactly.
friends and our other countries that are maybe not our friends in
Yeah,
Asia,
yeah, yeah.
and Guam and Samoa and all these places, and even Hawaii are like
Yeah.
right there, right in the middle of the Pacific. And it's interesting. So, how was it growing up with kind of that dual identity of being Chamorro, but also being kind of American and
Right.
speaking English, probably speaking, your own language at home? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, it's a trip when you move out here. When you're there, it's kind of just like part of life. Like that it's Guam, USA, right? That's what
Yeah.
we're told when we're young and everything. We do the Pledge of Allegiance in school. We do that, but we also do the Fanogi Chamorro, which is the pledge of the anthem, the pledge for Guam. And
Yeah.
that's in the native language, so that's good that they incorporate that. Some schools do that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, man, it feels it's funny when I was growing up, it never felt small, because we had so much family and so many different things to do, you know? So like, yeah, you know, you could go to the beach, you could go around, you're familiar with most of the places, but with the amount of people you know and the amount of people your parents know and your grandparents know, it's just like there's so much going on.
You had
Like,
to double check
yeah.
if you liked somebody, you had to double check who their grandparents were.
Oh yeah, that's the thing.
Mexicans
Gotta
have that
make
same
sure
problem.
make sure we're not cousins. No. She said no, so
I,
I believe it.
yeah, I know all my Islander friends and Filipino friends and Mexican friends gotta tease each other about that. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
double check that's not your cousin.
I know.
Uh,
Yeah, that's a real thing in Guam too, because there's not that many people, man. Like that's we joke about it, but at the same time, it's like, hey, who's got the knowledge of the family tree?
yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Well, one of the cool things about Guam that I've heard is that the day starts in Guam. Like for the
American,
US,
yeah,
America's day begins in Guam. And what can you
yeah.
explain to people what that means?
So Guam is the first territory of the United States to pass into the next day,
Yep,
right? So like right now it's tomorrow on Guam, it's the 26th.
right.
So and that's we're the furthest territory from the US, so we pass through the date line first and we yeah, so New Year's happens there first and then it happens in the States,
Right.
which is cool because you can kind of like celebrate New Year's on Guam and then wake up the next morning and then like watch it live like on
Yep.
TV in the States.
That's what we did from New
Kind of
Zealand. We were there a couple
yeah.
years ago
Oh yeah. So
for New
yeah,
Year's, and that's what we
yeah,
did.
it's a
Yeah,
similar time zone. Yeah.
very cool. Very cool. So okay, grew up in Guam and all that comes with the island life and culture. What what drew you to music and what instrument did you pick up first?
Yeah. So music has, well, I really started getting serious about music when I was out here, but growing up, it was like my dad playing Led Zeppelin on the guitar, Metallica,
That's what AJ said. That's
yeah, Foo
crazy.
Fighters and like Smashing Pumpkins and all that. So growing up, that was the first. Like I heard Smashing Pumpkins and Metallica before I ever heard the Beatles. I was just
I,
yeah, and Foo
that's
Fighters
awesome.
too, man. Yeah, Third Eye Blind, like all that, dude.
Yep, that's what I grew up on.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, so what how old are you now?
29 now.
Okay, yeah. So I got some years on you. So yeah, okay. So I'm probably younger than your dad, but older than you, maybe in between. So
Yeah,
very,
yeah,
very much the music
somewhere
that I
there.
grew up on as well.
Yeah. Oh no, but I love all that. Like that is like the start of me loving music is from like, yeah, those alternative 90s rock bands and metal bands and even classic rock, Led Zeppelin, you know.
Yep, yep.
But I really got into piano when
Classic rock is now like Linkin Park, right?
don't say that, dude. Don't say that, please. Now I'm dating myself,
Yeah.
That's like, yeah. Now I show my age.
So
No,
you grew up with some good influences at home. I did as
yeah.
well. And then when did you start playing them yourself?
So I was in piano lessons when I was a little kid, like 7, but I hated it because it was Saturday morning, and I'm like, why do I have to do like I just did a whole week of school, and now
Right.
you want me to do this? Yeah, but
Right.
I hated it. But then over the years, I was like, this is kind of like I was learning songs myself, right? Like whatever, like Over the Rainbow or something like that. But
Yep.
it's funny that you mentioned Linkin Park because that's the first song that I learned on my own where I was like, this is cool.
Yep.
It was Numb. It was a piano version of
Yep. Yep. Yep.
yeah.
That's
That
awesome.
was I can still play it too, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's
similar kind of as me. I started off more as a drummer, and I got a guitar, and I was struggling to the strings were hurting my fingers, and I was
oh, yep,
struggling to
yep.
learn the chords. But when I was able to just put the headphones on and play along to a song on the radio on the drums, that was pretty cool. And
That's
then when you
badass.
start
Yeah.
learning songs on guitar, piano, like that you can play along, that's when like you're hitting that next level. It is a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, yeah. It's great for young musicians to feel that too. And I teach kids like that's my job is I teach piano at an after school academy
Yeah.
for music. And I have every now and then like one out of like 18 kids will come in and say, hey, check it out. Look what I learned. And I was like, how'd you do that? He's like, I went on YouTube and just like followed the thing.
We didn't have YouTube.
I know. I was like, okay. I'm like,
We had to
okay.
read books.
I'm like, you're making an effort though, and he could play it,
Yes.
man. He could play it so well. I was like, okay, I can't argue with that. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's when it goes from your head to your heart, right? When you actually
Yeah.
start to either be able to play songs that you like, or you're able to create your own. That's when it starts to get fun, and then you start to do it with your friends. It becomes even more fun. I know
Yeah.
what you mean. I never really had lessons, but I've watched friends that had them, and it's not usually fun. It's usually like an old lady teaching you piano, slapping your hand, and it's boring. However, That's the one thing I tell parents. They say don't force your kids sometimes and let them figure out what they like. Well, not when it comes to piano, because if you can learn piano, I learned it backwards later in life, like in college, and I can kind of mess around. But if you can learn how to sight read and theory and how to play and read along at a young age, it will open up so many doors for you. It makes you better at math. It makes you just sharper, smarter, and look at all the things it's done for your life. Obviously, it sucked when you're 7, 8 years old, but
Yeah.
now, I mean, it's your livelihood. It's what you do. It's taking you around the world, right? So you're
Yeah.
grateful for those boring lessons, right?
I am. I really am, and yeah, that's the thing I tell the parents too. I was like, you know, even if they hate it right now, try to just stick with it for a little bit. If they really don't want to do it, that's fine. You could take them out. But usually the parents are like, no, 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 we want them to just like try for a while. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's good
Yeah.
instinct. Yeah.
Yeah, well, luckily, I mean, the kids that you're working with, if you have a good teacher, that makes all the difference, right?
True,
Just
yeah.
like in sports, if you have a bad coach, it might sour you on it, but if you have a good coach and good teammates, then it might make you want to stick with it. So, okay,
Absolutely.
so you got through that phase of you grew up with good music at home, you're
Mhm.
taking lessons, getting classically trained. At what point did you start playing with other people and kind of getting into bands?
So that was out here in college in
Okay.
the jazz band. Like I just joined because all my friends who we talk about music, they're just like, just join jazz band. I was like, I have no idea how to play any jazz music. So, but I'm like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew chords on piano. I could play Linkin Park and
Yeah. Chopsticks.
yeah, chopsticks and things like that.
Yeah.
But then yeah, I started really getting into guitar too. So I started in guitar, playing in the jazz combos. And then I realized there's so many better guitarists than me. So I switched to I switched to my main, which is piano. I was like, okay, I never should have gone away from piano. Like I just
Yeah.
want to keep doing it. And through that is where I started to jam with people and like really see what it's like to play off of another person's vibe in a band.
Yeah.
We started with like the easiest jazz standards, like uh Little Sunflower, which is like
Yeah.
three chords total. you
Right.
know and yeah, that's a great place to start. And it helps with counting too, and all those kinds of things when it comes to the form of a song.
Yeah, I wish we had a good band program at my high school, but my parents wouldn't let me really do a lot of things. But I wish that, other than sports and church, but I wish that the band teacher, for some reason, he said you can't be in jazz band unless you're in marching band. And I was like,
Oh
I don't want to
wow.
be in marching band.
It's
I
a
don't want to wear the
prerequisite or
costume.
something.
I don't want to look, I just want to jam. I want to be in jazz band. And that
Yeah,
was the
yeah.
requirement. You couldn't do one or the other. You had to be in both. So for some reason that was the
Oh,
rule. So
weird.
then I never
Yeah.
joined the band at school, even though I was a better musician at 15 than I am now, which is crazy.
I don't know about that. I didn't know 15-year-old you, but you're pretty badass now.
Thanks, man. Well, I was more of
Yeah.
a drummer. I was a pretty serious drummer back then, and now I'm a little bit rusty. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. I now I'm hyper aware of it because I see how easily that fire can get snuffed out in a kid,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to music. Because sports sports is different because it's you versus somebody else, and there's a team
Yeah.
involved, and it's like you have your good game, your bad game. Sports is, I don't know, it's different, but with music, it's like it's a lot more vulnerable, right? In sports, you
Yeah.
can hide behind a helmet and a team and whatever, but with music,
Right.
it's kind of like you're out there, especially if you're singing or
Yeah.
you're playing. It's like if you mess up, it's going to be obvious, right? And
Uh,
so a lot of people maybe have an interest in music, but they can't afford it. They can't afford the lessons or an instrument,
yeah.
or they don't have the support, or maybe they try and somebody insults them or makes fun of them, and then they
Right.
never
Right.
try again, right? I'm sure you've seen
The
kids that
thing. Yeah.
they beat themselves up because they can't learn the song right or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I wonder how, I know how much joy it's brought to my life in the form of friendships and experiences, and just the music itself. And I think how many people have been robbed by that because they had a parent or a sibling or a relative or a friend that just was
Yeah.
negative about their voice or about their skills or just didn't support them.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of musicians out there that we don't even realize could play, but they just don't want to because they're scared or they're embarrassed or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. That's true. That's a good point, and that's why I try to show these kids. I'm like, this is what music can do. Like I had to leave this weekend to go to Hilo to play 2 gigs in the Big Island of Hawaii.
Oh, it sounds terrible.
Yeah, it sounds awful, right? But I try to tell the kids that I was like, man, the places I've been because I could play, like you can do it too. Like, this is obviously the younger kids, they think it's cool, but they don't really comprehend the
Right.
longevity of it. But the
Right.
kids that are older, like middle school stuff, they're like, wow, you could actually do that. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, you can be famous on TikTok.
that too. See, that's another
Whatever it
thing.
is.
I have feelings about that too. That's a different thing.
Yeah, that's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's a
So, okay,
different thing.
you're starting to jam in jazz bands. You're here going to college in the Bay Area, which first of all, before we get into like the professional career, what was it like going from Guam to the Bay Area?
That was a big one. Yeah.
Culture shock?
Yeah, it was a big culture shock because, besides everybody speaking English, because people in Guam also speak English, but coming over here, it's like that was the only thing that was similar. Like, people were pretty nice for the most part, like my friends that I made, because we all connected with music. So I
We
was
got to
like,
remember too, the Bay Area is pretty diverse compared to
it's
other parts of
diverse.
the
Yeah,
country.
it's true.
As
It's
far as
true.
the food and the culture, it's
Yeah.
much better than the Midwest or other places.
Right, right. And I like it for that reason. And I met a lot of other people from Guam out here, so we were able to connect with that. But no, man, it was great. Like I fell in love with San Francisco and the
Yeah.
Bay Area and the history of like rock and roll, and the revolution and the 60s and all that. Like
Yep.
that
Yep.
was that was pretty much my identity for the first 5 years I was out here. Yeah.
And Mexican food.
Oh, that, dude. Yep. The Mission, I would always go down to Mission, dude. Always go down to the Mission. Late
Yeah.
night tacos, dude. Yes.
Game changer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
changed my
it's
life.
funny. People don't realize. I think obviously New York gets all the attention you know, for obvious reasons. New York gets a lot of attention. Hollywood gets a lot of attention, but the Bay Area, I feel like, doesn't get as much credit as it deserves for
Yeah,
its contributions to culture and music, as far as, like you said, civil rights,
yeah,
um, the anti-Vietnam War movement, the Black Panthers,
yeah.
a lot of the
Music
bands that came out
history.
of it.
Yeah,
Woodstock wouldn't have happened without Monterey Pop. And then you
yes,
have all these bands from the Bay Area like Santana or Journey or Malo or Tierra, or, all these different bands that were just eclectic and really sounded like that era, right? The 60s and 70s in the Bay Area were such a time of, I mean, I'm sure I'm missing people, but there's so many people that,
yeah,
Jimi Hendrix, that
yeah.
there's this
Talent.
like
There's
Bay
so
Area,
many.
Seattle connection as well. And it's like, it's, man, to this day, obviously the hip hop scene with like Too Short and E40 and Mac Dre
Yeah,
and all these other artists has really influenced. And another amazing local artist is her. She's from
yep,
Oakland, and or Jeremy Passion's a friend of mine from San Francisco. The point is, like, the diversity of the Bay Area has spread throughout the world. The style, a lot of that, like
yeah,
E40 says, where the rappers get their lingo from, but it's the
yeah,
same in other genres of music too.
yeah. And Mark Hamill was born in Oakland.
That's crazy.
Luke
And
Skywalker.
George
So,
Lucas lives in North
so
Bay.
yeah. So don't forget that, man.
Yeah,
No.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So you got into the Bay Area, you started making some friends, you're playing in some little gigs here and there. When was it like, okay, I'm gonna start playing gigs and get paid, and like starting to do bar gigs or weddings, or what were we starting to do?
So I started playing gigs long before I ever got paid for them, which is like, that's like what you do with your friends,
Yes, yes,
You're just
yes,
hanging
for
out. You're
sure.
like, somebody's like, hey man, somebody told us that we can play tonight at the bar. And everyone in the band's like, what?
They're gonna give us
Are you
pizza and
for real?
beer.
Yeah, it's like,
What?
oh, okay. It's like we just struck the biggest record deal ever.
Heck yeah.
But so I started with the band. Well, I had a jazz fusion band with my friends in Foster City called Life Fire, and that's when we started doing some crazy stuff. Like we would do DIY shows in SF in
Nice.
Sutro Cave.
I've heard of it.
It's the cave over there near the Sutro Baths, and
Ah, okay.
yeah, we went in there. They put a generator at the back of the cave, and it would start.
Just crazy
Yeah,
acoustics.
no, because you could plug in with a generator. So we
Yeah,
brought all our instruments in a cave with like candlelight and played like this jazz fusion
that's
in the middle
dope.
of the night. It was crazy, and we started doing stuff like that. And then I started playing reggae with Skankbank in Berkeley, that band. And
Dope.
that's when we started touring, like going up the West Coast to Seattle, all the way down Texas. Yeah, that first tour with them was probably the one that changed me, where I was like, I want to do this forever. Like,
Right.
yeah,
It usually, going on tour, it's not as glamorous as people think, especially when you're just
yeah,
getting started. But most artists or musicians have one of two reactions to going on tour. Either they absolutely hate it and they go, I'm never doing this again. This is uncomfortable. This
yeah,
is not worth the money or the time. Or they go, oh my God, that's incredible.
yeah,
This is all I want to do for the rest of my life. Are you
yeah.
telling me people pay me to just have fun every night with my friends and jam
Yeah,
on stage, which we would do in our garage anyway. And now we're out here doing it to fans, and people are
yeah,
liking it. And I get to do it in different cities.
yeah,
So
for
there's
real.
usually two reactions.
Yeah, I'm in the later camp,
Yeah, yeah,
the latter camp. Yeah, it's I can't cure it now. It's that's
yeah,
it.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Part of me, even we got to play together this year in Cali Roots, which was epic. And it was a great feeling. It was kind of a bucket list goal achieved. And so part of me was
that
kind
was
of
a
like,
big one.
okay,
Yeah,
like, am I good? Is that enough? Like, is it, am I good off of that? And then the next week I was at Cali Vibes, and we were there, hanging out with a lot of the artists that are friends, and watching some shows, and was able to get some tickets from our friends at Revolution. Was just on
yeah,
stage with them and watching the crowd respond to Stick Figure and a Revolution. I'm just like, man, I don't know. It's pretty
yeah.
cool. It's kind of hard to walk away from this kind of stuff, you
No,
know?
it is. And I was getting a lot of FOMO watching you guys.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, dude, I'm like, everybody's there. I'm like,
Yes.
shit.
You
No,
got
but
to
it
check
looked
it out.
cool. I was watching Ellie Mac's stories and all those guys. So
Oh, she killed it.
I was
Yeah.
like checking it out like through
Yeah.
everybody's angle. Like, oh, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So you got the bug. Now you're a gigging machine, because listen, guitar players are a dime a dozen. Drummers are a dime a dozen, not good ones, but
Yeah, good drummers are important, dude. We need
good
those.
drummers are very important. Shout out to AJ and
Oh, the legend, dude.
shout out to all the guys that we've played with over
Alex
the years.
Cortez.
Alex is actually
Yeah,
how we
bro.
met.
That's the
I
one. He's the
remember
one
because
that
we were,
brought me into the fold.
yeah,
Yeah.
we've worked with different people on the keys over the years. And Alex said, "Oh, you guys got to meet my friend Connor." And we just randomly picked you up at your place, like,
For
loaded
real,
up your
dude.
gear,
Then
went
we
to the
went up
super
to,
sketchy studio in Oakland, where we're like
yeah, dude.
outside of an encampment. We're like loaded in 10 grand worth of gear.
For real, dude.
And there's like
Soundwave.
some sketchy stuff going on around us. It was good times. Nice to meet you.
For real. No, but do you know we immediately started talking about music and just like people
Yeah.
who we play with? You're like, it's like, oh, Silver? Oh yeah, dude.
Oh,
I
yeah, yeah, yeah,
did a tour
totally.
with him on sound for Ayaterra, and this and that, dude.
Yep.
And Booer and all those guys. I was like,
Yeah,
bro,
yeah.
I literally was with them for like a whole month. Like,
That's awesome. So you were doing a lot of jazz stuff, but then all of a sudden you start doing the kind of reggae,
yeah,
island, Cali reggae vibe. Like, how did that seems like you really became one of the go-to people in the whole Bay Area and the whole scene, really, for that style, that island reggae, that Cali reggae. Like, what was that transition for
yeah.
you going from jazz?
It was crazy because like I had this whole vision of like the jazz scene and trying to be this jazz cat.
Yeah, yeah,
And then I started playing with Skankbank and then we did so many gigs and then through that I got more gigs and then like Chris Cortez, like I mentioned earlier, he started having me play with Native and that led to more gigs because all the Native guys are so experienced and they play in other bands too.
yeah, yeah.
And that's actually how I got to play with Fiji is because I played with Native elements and then the bass player Vendo played with me that night, and then he called me up a year later, and he's like, "Hey, can you do this gig?"
So
It,
cool.
it was just word of mouth, but it's all because those people gave me a chance.
Yeah.
Chris Cortez, Gabe Winter, all those guys, man.
Well, and I shout out to those guys. And of course, getting a chance and opportunity is super important, but you also delivered, right? And for anyone listening who's a musician or who's thinking about, being a musician or whatever, like, that's how it happens. If you do what you say you're going to do, you show up on time, you get along with everyone, you work hard, keep a good attitude. I mean, the door's open, and you
Yeah,
can build a good reputation for yourself. And the opposite is true, right? If
true.
you get too drunk, or you're an asshole,
Yeah,
or you don't learn the songs, or you're
yep,
not focused, you also get a reputation.
yeah, for
It's
real.
always awkward sometimes when those are the people leading the band, and then the
Oh yeah,
rest of the music. I've been in bands, and the rest of the musicians are like, "Should we just start our own band? Because this guy's
yeah,
crazy."
yeah, yeah. I've heard a lot of stories like that from my friends too, and then they've started their own bands.
Yeah,
Their own bands are sick, dude. Like
yeah,
I'll go out to see them every weekend, and it's just a blast. I'm like, this is the energy focused.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we're starting to see, and I think we're getting to that level now. And that was one of the things for me that was important with Cali Roots, when everyone was like, "Oh my God, congratulations! How'd it feel?"
yeah,
I said, "It felt good. It felt right. It felt normal. Like, it was
yeah.
just, it was special, but it was also kind of like another gig. It's like, okay."
Right,
And what I asked them, the friends that had been watching us for all these years, I said, "Hey, be honest. Did it feel like we belonged there? Like, did we blend in with the other bands on
right,
the
right.
lineup?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, you guys fit right
Yeah,
in." So I was like, "That's all I wanted." I wasn't trying to
Oh
steal the
yeah.
show. I just wanted to be like, hey, we belong in a lineup like this. And the
Yeah.
feedback I got from everyone was that we did. So that, what to me, that was mission accomplished.
I got good feedback too the next day, even from bands that were just watching on the live,
Yeah.
but played like some members of Ellie Mac's band who saw us, some members of Fia's band too who saw us, which are like friends of mine. They were all
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you played with her yesterday?" Because like that was like, you know, I feel like when we went up there and Renee did her thing, that was like kind of a buzz for a
Yep.
minute, dude. Like
Yep.
for like half the weekend or the whole weekend, people were
Yep.
talking about that first
Yeah.
band. Like, what
You're like,
was that?
who are those guys? Yeah.
Yeah, no, but like
Yeah.
even the other bands too, the more established bands were talking about it, and I was like, dude, I'm like, that's why I was proud to walk around all weekend. I was like,
Yep.
I was jamming with them.
Yes, exactly. Well, you're a big
Yeah.
part of it. And I think, my brother Cam and I, we've played with Renee for a long time, over a decade off and on. And we've had some great times. We worked with other musicians, like we mentioned, Alex and Chris and others. But
Yeah.
with that band that kind of came together, and all of a sudden, once we realized, okay, 2025, we're going to really get serious. And it worked out to have Bruno and have you and have AJ. And we kind of came back together as well. And it was like, okay, this is the squad we
Yeah.
can team up with. And I know those first couple practice, we were all looking around like, oh shit, like, okay, I think we got something here. I think if we put in the time, um, it's hard because you guys are so busy. We're all so busy. And
Yeah.
it's hard to get everybody on the same page and the same
Yeah.
schedule. You live in the Bay Area. We live down here in the 831. Cam lives up
Right.
in
Right.
Mendo. But we saw the goal, we made it a priority, and we made it work. And I think the results speak for themselves. And I think we all have that same feeling of accomplishment, but also like, this is not enough. We're not satisfied. We want more.
It's true, yeah. You got to stay hungry, man. Like in the scene, that's the only way that you move forward too. But like you said, like same attributes of being a good musician and good reputation is like, you're kind to people, you show up, you make them have a good time, make them laugh, like, let
Yeah.
them remember that you're also somebody cool to hang with outside of the awesome band you play with.
Yeah,
And then
for
that
sure.
that
You're
alone will boost the reputation of an entire band.
totally, well, you're a good example of that. And when you went from playing, bar gigs, doing covers, having fun, making a couple bucks and a couple beers with your buddies,
Yep, yep.
all of a sudden now you're playing festivals, you're getting flown out to other countries and other states to play festivals. What was that like? And when did that happen? And what were some of those opportunities?
Yeah, that was crazy. The first time that happened was well, it's funny because when I started dating Carissa, she's like, "Oh yeah, who I'm friends with is a Freddie Four Piece from Four Piece band from Guam, and they toured with Ellie Mac and Fiji and all those guys. And Freddie needed a keyboardist to play with Josh Heinrichs in
Yeah.
Florida, and my other buddy Shabby couldn't make it, so Shabby's like, who should I ask? And Carissa mentioned to them to call me. And that was like where it all started. Because then I flew out with them, rehearsed there with Josh Heinrichs. And first of all, that's Josh Heinrichs. So
Yes, love his voice.
I was like, dude, this is
Shout out to
crazy,
supportive
man.
partners and family members and friends that plug us.
Yeah, for real, dude. Yeah. But no, it was cool to hang out with Josh Heinrichs. I was like, and then play two festivals with him in Florida. I was like, this feels like the big time. And
Yep.
then the year after that, through the same guys, Shabby got the Ellie Mac tour. And that one was nuts because that was 22 shows, full US tour. The only reason it ended is because one of the band members or a couple of people got COVID when we were at Cornerstone over.
Oh shit. In
But we
Berkeley?
only had like a couple dates left, but it ended there and we were in the bus the whole time. So it was like perfect for me to just step off because I live in the Bay. But
Yeah, yeah.
it was sad because I was like, dude, this is, it becomes your family after like
Yes.
4 weeks.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's not as glamorous as people think,
No.
when you're kind of getting started, but there's definitely friendships and memories that you make on the road that you don't in other ways, right? And
Yeah.
so it's I don't know, it's just a different feeling. And like you said, when you work with other, whether it's sound people or tour managers or security or drivers, or I've been all those things,
Yeah. Yeah.
you develop that. It's just a respect and an appreciation because you know what each other are going through. You know what I mean? You're like, hey man, if
Real.
you get your gear jacked, we're gonna go look for it together. Or
Yeah,
hey, if
man.
there's somebody being a drunk asshole and messing with your merch girl, like we'll handle
Yeah.
them. Or if you need help running sound, like we got you. Like you worry about the show, we'll be back here. Like everyone kind of pitches in, especially if you're on tour together. But even if you're
Yeah.
not on tour together, like I've been at shows and shit happens, you have to step in and help out, whether it's a fight or merch or
Yeah,
sound issue or backstage issue, or you just kind of like, it's a community. And
it
between
is. Yeah.
a lot of these bands, a lot of these festivals, it's been a really cool family and community that's evolved in the island and Cali reggae scene over the last 10-20 years.
Yeah, man. And it's really cool to see like the people that you guys have known for a long time that I kind of just met through, doing that kind of, like jamming with the Cali bands and also with
Yeah,
the Hawaiian, the local island bands. I was like, wow, dude, like there's a lot of overlap, a lot of people work with
such
a
a
lot of
small world.
people. Yeah, but it's great. I love the reggae scene, especially like, the West Coast reggae scene, including the islands and even the US reggae scene. Is like, it's awesome, man. Like
Yeah,
people for
for
the
sure.
most part are sick, dude. They're awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, of course, anytime you have groups of people, there's going to be some bad apples and there's going to be some drama and misunderstandings. But for the most part, the music is positive and the music is kind of what guides it, right? And everyone
Yeah.
kind of feels like they're not just performing; they're actually like on a mission, and they're like spreading the vibes and they're spreading the lifestyle. Islanders might call it one thing, Latinos might call it one thing, the African
Yeah.
Americans might call it one thing, the other everyone else has their version of explaining it, but we're all kind of working towards that same thing. And obviously, you give credit to Jamaica and everything that started it there,
Oh yeah, man.
but the Cali and the kind of reggaeton and the island thing has become its own. They're all just different flavors of some of the same ingredients, but different
Yeah.
flavors.
It is, man. Yeah, it's good vibes. Just
Yeah.
good vibe feeling, dude.
So you've had quite a career already. You're not even freaking 30. I didn't realize how young you are,
Almost there. Almost there. No.
which is awesome. I know that, already you've had a great career and resume. Just in the last year, you've done some pretty cool stuff, including
Yeah, man.
playing together at Cali Roots. And I know we got some
Hollywood.
big shows coming up this summer, which I'm excited about.
Yep, yep.
But what are some things you're currently working on? I know you have some personal projects as well. And what are you
Yeah.
excited about next? Like, what are you excited for the next year or two?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that's happened in the past year, I would say, was the release of my first album, Hot Pot, which is the jazz album.
Awesome.
It's jazz influence, it's bossa nova, it's funk, it's fusion, but it's crazy because I worked so hard on it with my producer and my engineer and also with the band too. And just the album release show last year was like the pinnacle. That was like,
Yeah. Oh,
like
so cool. I followed
it,
it along on social media.
yeah, man, it just felt so good, and it sounds good. And the main reason I wanted to put out that album is to give myself more material to do with my own band, right?
Yeah.
That was the bottom line. I'm like, it's okay if this gets like 100 streams in a year, like
Yeah. Yeah.
as
Yeah.
long as this is on there. Because if people ask you, you got music, and things,
Yeah.
I'll show them this highly produced, very well mastered, very well played album.
Yep.
And it's just a good piece of resume to have, and also more repertoire for my live band to play. So as for things coming up, we have a show the 11th at the Brick and Mortar.
Nice.
Will be supported by Mint Glaze and Kiana, an artist from San Francisco.
Awesome.
And yeah, man, Brick and Mortar is a great place if you can fill it and get the bodies in there because the energy is up.
Okay.
This week,
Where can people find you to find information
um,
about your shows and your gigs?
yeah, so you can visit Brick and Mortar's website for the next show. It's on the 11th of July. That's a Friday night, which is great because the album release show was on a Wednesday night, and people still, managed to come in. But yeah, I've got just check my Instagram, Connor Sablan Music. All the links are there in the link tree, the socials and all that. But you can listen to the album there. And I'm currently trying to write the next album, and I don't want it to be completely jazz, because I feel like I want to go back to something you said about the,
Yeah.
joining in the reggae scene and all that. It's like I've always loved and grown up with island reggae, living on Guam, obviously,
Yeah.
but it's like I never asked to like seek it out and go play it, but it's like swept me up,
It
dude. And
found you.
like, yeah, it like swept me up and took me all the way. And I was like, okay, I'm like, so I feel like I need to honor that with the next album and add, some more of that element in there, not like
I love.
full on roots, like that kind of thing, but I
Yeah.
want like something,
Island reggae
I want
inspired.
some roots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I'm excited to hear whatever you come up with next. I love your other projects as well. And it's tough because we're all so busy and we live further apart. Like when we get together, it's like, okay, we got to use the most of our time and we got to really practice and we got to get ready for the
Yeah.
set. But I hope at some point before the end of the year, we've talked about maybe getting an Airbnb or something. I
Oh
hope we can
yeah.
just take a day and just have no agenda or no set, and just like
Yeah.
write some stuff and jam out and see what
Yeah.
comes from that. Because I know as much as we all love reggae, we're also, you know, into R&B and hip hop and classic
Right.
rock, and so we're not necessarily stuck on just reggae, um,
Right.
although we love it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what we can all come up with individually and collectively.
Yeah.
um, so just as we close, you've had an incredible journey up until this point. I mean, if you stopped tomorrow, then you could have said you had a great career. Obviously, you're not going to stop. You're a full-time
Right. Yeah.
musician. You give back. You teach kids. You're touring all over the world. You've had some pretty incredible moments. But what would you say now that you've accomplished so much in your 20s, heading into your 30s? What is that? What are some next big like bucket list goals for you in your 30s?
Ooh, that's a good question. Probably playing with maybe taking less gigs. Well, taking less gigs, like saying yes to everything, and just focusing on the bands that I really believe in and that kind of thing, and also pushing my own project forward too.
I love
So
that.
yeah, I love where we're going with this band with our group. I
Yep.
would love to keep that going, and I
Yep.
just want to see where that goes, and also push more my own band to try to get, obviously more shows and things like that, and see where we land. Because like I'm not shooting for the jazz scene, I'm not shooting for like the reggae festival scene. I'm shooting for like, wherever we can make people feel good. And then
I love that.
they'll tell me where they want us to go. And I'm
Yeah.
okay with that, I'm
I
okay
love
with
that. Well, I
class.
think,
Categorize me, please. No.
yeah, no, I think you have a great mentality, a great spirit and attitude about you. And you know, it's all going to work out. I'm grateful for everything we've done together so far and what we're going to do next. And I agree. I think we all have that feeling of, man, let's see where this thing goes. Cause it's the potential is there. I think we
Yeah.
can be proud of what we've done, but we all know that we're not even, we haven't reached our full potential yet. I think we know
Yeah.
that individually and collectively. And so I'm excited to see what that's going to sound like and what that's going to look like. But please give my best to your lady. And thank you so much
Yeah,
for
man.
taking the time tonight, man.
Yeah,
We'll
definitely,
we'll be
bro.
in touch, bro. We'll see you soon.
Thanks,
Take
bro.
care.
I finally made on the podcast.
Yes,
Yeah.
you did it.
Yeah.
All
All
right,
right,
brother. Have
bro.
a good night. Take
You too,
care.
brother. Okay, peace. Catch you.